So Tom, absolute pleasure to be with you here. We did our first podcast with you ever, and look at us now, you know. So we're obviously not in the UK because it's beautiful weather, but it'd be great to talk a little bit about British Padel and you know how the previous year has gone, or maybe even the previous couple of years since we did our last podcast, and what we're thinking is going to happen for the future. So first of all, thanks for being on this, but let's do a little bit of a recap maybe of the last couple of years. Like, how has this integration with the LTA gone, do you think?
Yeah, I think you know, a lot of people might think, you know, it's grown a lot slower than we had hoped. However, I think it's been a little bit of a blessing in disguise because, you know, the growth within the UK, there's a lot of barriers. So it might be planning permission, building regs. You know, so projects can take a long time. Obviously, with COVID in the midst of that 2-year period that we're talking about, there's been quite a few barriers for a lot of projects. So it's given us a chance as the LTA to put everything in place and try and facilitate the forecasted growth. And now I feel that we've really been in a position to be able to do that throughout 2022. And I think we've also put in a few a few areas which are going to benefit the game long term. From the coaching pathway to the competition platform, and now we're in a really good it's a really good time, let's say, for the infrastructure that we do have for us to now start making greater investment, and you're going to start to see that throughout 2023. An example might be last year we had 1 FIP, this year we're looking to do 4 to 6. So, and then prize money for our graded tournaments is doubling. So I mean, there's quite a few things that we're doing there in order to grow the pathway, and in effect provide a greater platform for a wider depth of players coming in. And
I mean, I think we're quite close, and I spend a lot of time with you, so I see the work that is going on behind the scenes, but a lot of people don't see that. And you're talking about this integration over the last couple of years, and there's been a tremendous amount of work. People don't realize that you're kind of trying to integrate with every different department within the LTA, and you look at other countries and some have grown too fast. If we look at Sweden as an example, they probably would have loved to have had the infrastructure in place before that massive explosion, and I think, like you say, it is a blessing that we are going to grow a little bit slower probably, but we will have those systems in place, I hope.
Yeah, it will grow in a sustainable way, and I think it is key. A lot of people look at this as the UK and maybe Germany being kind of the last two countries to catch onto this paddle wave, and it's true, but I think there's just been potentially more barriers in our two countries compared to others, and also a lot of it has to do with the private sector, right? That's kind of really driving that growth, and that's what exploded in Sweden. You saw it in other countries such as the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, and France. So and that's kind of represented a good 30-40% of overall total paddle court growth. And when you've got a tennis federation getting behind it, you can touch into the existing resources to drive the game, but you are still dependent upon the available infrastructure, so total amount of courts. And if the private sector hasn't already driven that for you, you've got to address that. And primarily our influence is within existing tennis venues. And we're already facilitating that growth as much as we can by offering interest-free loans over a flexible term, and that's why you're seeing it grow in a sustainable way. So, and now, I think because all eyes are kind of on the UK and Germany, the private sector has got so much potential right now, and it's really just going to flourish, and therefore drive overall participation. And we know that that's going to come, and we're ready for it, and that's why we've had spent the last few years really putting everything into place so that we are ready for that growth and expectations.
So we talked about 2023. Moving forward for this year, there's going to be more FIPs, more prize money for the competitions. what else are we going to see in the coming year or 2 years that's going to help drive the sport?
Yeah, I mean, specifically this year, we're going to see a lot of changes. I mean, the LTA has, in essence, rebranded. We've got a new paddle logo now, which you'll see kind of shortly throughout the websites and then all of our events. The events prize money has doubled, more international events, so there's FIPs coming in, and in addition to that, we've just launched a performance program. So for that, we've hired a paddle performance manager, who now obviously reports into me, and that role is key for developing the entire pathway, identifying opportunities in all age groups, juniors all the way through to the open category, and liaising, working with clubs, coaches. So it's developing the workforce, which is important if you want to develop players around the country. So that's an exciting time. I mean, it's going to enable us to really drive and make a difference this year, which we haven't been able to do in previous years. Not having the resource, but we didn't have the resource because there wasn't the infrastructure to justify putting that resource forward. So the LTA is heavily invested in paddle, and we're going to start to see that this year.
And I mean, having spoken to the performance manager, I think he'll be a great fit. I think it's definitely something that we need, and definitely something that will help drive it forward. And it's almost probably, again, just emphasising a bit of patience, because he's not going to suddenly come in and suddenly we're going to have junior academies throughout the country, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But as these slightly bigger clubs come online, I think it lends more potential to having regional camps for juniors, for seniors, for everyone really. One last question for you, Tom. If you could give one piece of advice to someone that wants to build a paddle club in the UK, and again I've just put you on the spot here a little bit, but what would that piece of advice be?
I would say obviously identifying where the location is before getting in touch with us. So we get a lot of inquiries to say, I want to create a paddle venue, help. Yeah.
Can I just pick your brains?
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
that a lot. Yeah.
I imagine as well. So it's definitely identify what area would be suitable for that individual or group or organisation, and then we have resources locally to support those actions. So for example, with our LTA regional teams, we can then support with the planning application. So once you've found that venue, we can be, kind of open the door with maybe a local authority that doesn't know paddle yet, and really be, provide as much supporting resource as possible to kind of fast track as much as we can those initial pre-application stages. And
I mean, this feels like one of my tutorial videos on the court here, but again, it's patience for those people, isn't it, really? Like if you're dealing with councils or you're working to try and find the land and you're working with support with the LTA, like patient. If you take one thing from this podcast, it's be patient.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just the case for local authority. I mean, a lot of individuals are looking to existing warehouses. And quite often the warehouse may have a different license that's not leisure and sport.
And change of use.
Change of use isn't straightforward, where a landlord might be reluctant to allow you to do that. So you might spend a long time trying to find a suitable venue, and then you're running into those issues later on. So there's quite a few variables. Again, it's just emphasising what you've just said. It's being patient, and we will help and facilitate that growth as much as we can.
Well, hopefully we're sitting here in this time next year in Alicante in this beautiful weather with 500 paddle courts in the UK and already on our upward curve. So Tom, thank you very much for this episode, and an absolute pleasure as always.
Pleasure. Thank you.